And we are live for another episode of the Blue Eyed Devil podcast, streaming on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, formerly on Google Podcasts, which is now just YouTube. I have been so incredibly fortunate over the last number of years to sit down with former premiers, pastors, DJs, and a whole array of different people who have helped me see the world and life quite differently. But I get to sit down today with a friend, a colleague, and someone who I have a great amount of admiration for, Margot Wilkins. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, David.
It's really good to have you here.
It's very exciting.
Margot and I work together in frontline healthcare. We work with folks who have persistent and ongoing mental health issues, history of addiction a lot of the time, struggling with homelessness. And when somebody asked me who was I interviewing today, I said, I'm interviewing somebody who I believe really gets it. And when I say get it, I might be speaking of a number of things, right? Because I have a history as a priest. I have a history as a frontline worker. I have a history in crisis. I've also got a whole bunch of personal stuff. But you probably didn't expect this, but I'm going to quote some scripture.
Oh, boy.
In the 25th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says to a bunch of his disciples, I'm going to have to look at you like sheep and goats. Sheep and goats. And the goats are the ones who didn't care for me when I was hungry and I was sick and I was thirsty and I was in prison. You walked right past me. But I'll recognize the sheep because when I was hungry, they gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, they gave me something to drink. When they were in prison, you came and visited me. And I have to be honest, Margot, when people ask me about you, that's who I think about. I think about that kind of predisposition to love towards those who have nothing left to give, but loving them anyway. Is that you?
Yeah, I think so. That's really interesting that you describe me that way. I think that, like, when I really think about why I do the work that I do or how I get involved with people like this is I really do see the good in everyone. Mm-hmm. I watch like a lot of true crime stuff. I'm kind of a nerd for that. I have had people in my life for maybe longer than I should have. And the reason why I'm saying those things is because I see people that are usually discarded by other people because of maybe their bad behavior or because they've done something horribly wrong. And the first places I go is what happened to them. How did they get there to be able to either do something as bad as they did? What bad things happened to them to get them to that place? Or, if there's somebody that is, treating me poorly and I'm trying to work with them to get them to treat me or other people in a different way, I'm always trying to figure out what's underneath all of that. And I don't know if it's just like curiosity or if it's just really just part of who I am.
I don't think it's curiosity, to be honest, although there might be a curious element to it. I think it's having come to know you, working alongside you, I've come to know it as empathy, a very deep empathy, and especially those from whom have done wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a judgment in some ways, right? It's because who's deciding what's wrong and what's right, but so many of our clients are folks who have been discarded and told that they are wrong, or they are bad, or they're really not worth anybody's attention.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I first met you actually in an interview because people might be surprised. You're my boss.
That's right.
Right? You're my boss. And there's been a number of times working together in frontline work where I've had to come to you, right? Where I've had to, where it's good to have a boss sometimes. It really is good to have a boss sometimes when you realize you're not fully responsible for all these people, that somebody else, right? But I've had to come to you to ask hard questions because not everyone approaches our clients the same way, right?
Yeah.
We know this, right? A lot of people treat them really badly, from police to hospitals, to doctors and nurses, to just people we know in our personal lives who often don't treat marginalized people very well.
To our partners as well.
To family, right? Like
Yep.
we know it to be true. And on my worst days in my life, even me,
Yeah.
right? And so we're working with folks who don't necessarily trust the system, trust us, and they're looking for us to advocate for them. So we have certain values that we believe in, and one of them is harm reduction
Yeah.
as an approach to managing the recovery model of addiction. And in Toronto, we had an announcement a few weeks ago where a whole series of harm reduction centers that our clients rely on for their health and wellness have been unilaterally closed across the board. Can you tell me why that happened and what you think is the answer to that?
Well, I think it's a good question, like, as to why it happened. I mean, I've been trying to sort of figure that out. There's a lot of theories because I don't think that what we're getting back from the government, the things that they're saying are necessarily the whole truth. I think, they talk a lot about safety in the community, safety for children, safety for, neighbors. However, if they were really concerned about safety, then they would be looking at, the output of these services. Like why are people going there, and what are the things that they're getting while they're there?
What's been lost? What's been lost by them being gone now?
Well, definitely what is going to be lost as they're leaving is a safe place for people to be able to use drugs and get the support that they need. It's like closing Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is not just about abortions. Planned Parenthood is about healthcare. It's about connecting people to resources and services so that they can get the help that they need, right? And that's exactly what these sites do as well. They're not just a place for people to shoot up drugs.
Yep.
They're a place for people to access resources, nursing care. It's a place for people to start their journey to recovery, whatever that means for them. Not everybody is going to want to or have the ability to completely abstain from drugs. Yep. And that is a reality that we need to face as a community and as a society. And I don't think that our government is willing to go there. And I think that it's just a lot of lip service.
And it's fair to say, as we get older, sometimes people ask me for questions as though I'm an expert on something. And, who's the other expert to ask, right? So I'm asking you on some level as an expert in the field. You're a leader in this field, right? And there's enough studies out there to say what happens when people struggling with addiction and mental health use in isolation, and what happens when they use in community. And the science is very clear that when people use in isolation, they revel and spiral in shame, right? Which only leads to more use. And when they use in community, they get connection and the endorphins to their brain that come with connection alongside the drugs they're using.
Right.
And are unlikely to overdose using in community.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that the Ford government's approach to harm reduction is anti-science?
I think there's a lot of examples in Ford government policies that are anti-science, anti-research. It's not, we're privatizing healthcare, removing bike lanes, overdeveloping our land. That all of those things. He's completely ignored all of the actual experts and the scientists and the researchers and the environmentalists and the healthcare, like everyone, to get what he wants, I guess. And I think what it all comes down to is wedge politics.
Yeah.
He's trying to separate us so that, him and his pals can get what they want, which is power and money.
So We have closed all these harm reduction centers. They're not coming back, right? We can
Yep.
we can say all we want. They're not coming back, which means there aren't places for our clients to gather the way there once were. We've closed so many of the hotels that housed folks during the pandemic, and we do see the ill effects of this with our clients, because what happens is when people don't have space to be, they're going to get in trouble, right? We know this because what comes with mental health and what comes with drug addiction and it's crime a lot of the time,
Yep.
right? They're almost tied to each other, right? We see it again and again and again. And if you have mental health and addiction issues and you don't have a safe place to be, and you're out using somewhere, you are the most likely to get harassed by police, right? Because you're using drugs in public, because the government took away your place to go and be safe. And we know that our clients don't get treated the same as everybody else by the police. Right? I beat my breast about that all day.
Yeah.
Our clients do not get treated the same as middle-class Canadians by the police.
Yeah.
Should we call the police?
Right now?
No, ever. Should we ever call the police, Margot?
Yes. I think there are I think there's a place for police, absolutely. What I think that place is violent crime. I think there's a place for detective work. I think there's a place for domestic violence and things like that. I mean, does it need to be the police the way we see it now? No. But I also think the police need to be, especially in Toronto, paying more attention to the street. Like the vehicle, the violence that we experience driving or getting to work every day. And, you know, as a cyclist, as a driver, I see it all the time. That's where I want to see the police is pulling people over when they are behaving badly on the road. Otherwise, I think that we need to be, you know, looking at more mental health and experts, nurses, doctors, and people that have the ability to de-escalate in a safe way. I think that we would have seen a lot less death in the last, 10 years in Toronto. Samia Team, I forget her name, the woman that was at the, anyways, that fell from the apartment building.
Oh yeah. And
But yeah.
And things are changing. Right? Like, because you've seen my CV, that I was on the pioneer team for the Toronto Community Crisis Service. I've responded in the field in the middle of the night, an Albion parking lot at Jane and Finch with police. I've seen police do good work, and I've seen police do horrific work.
Yeah.
And the problem is when police do horrific work, which is too often, people's lives get ruined.
Yeah.
There was an article and some reporting out of CTV this week about a police tribunal that found a police officer guilty of 20 occurrences of lying about seeing evidence that wasn't there. Drugs, lying. And he did not lose his job. He was demoted from a 3-star police officer to a 2-star. I don't even know what it is, but he was demoted for lying about evidence 20 times. I have clients who've told me the police have lied about evidence, and nobody believes them.
Yep.
Nobody believes them. And I'll be honest, sometimes I don't believe them.
Yep.
But maybe we should.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure I believe the police.
No. Well, I mean, we just saw this big case, too, of that gentleman who was with his family who ran over that police officer. I think that was New Year's Eve last year.
Yeah.
And it was because he felt like he was attacked. He was being attacked, and he got scared, and he had a baby and a wife. and they all lied
Yep.
about what happened.
Yep.
And that was an amazing example of what could happen. You know, if the system works better. But I think that is a very small percentage of what actually happens when the police lie, because I think they do it all the time. It's a boys' club. It's a cult.
Dawood Bramble, who's the new clinical lead of the Toronto Community Crisis Service up in the northwest of Toronto, which is CMHA. I was in a meeting with him years ago, and Dawood is a black man from the Caribbean, and he shared with us that not once in his life, and this is a man with no criminal record, no history of it, not once in his life has he seen a police car in his rearview mirror anywhere and not felt terrified. I don't know that to be true for me, because my experience as a white man is not the same as his with the police. I've had different experiences with the police, but not because of this particular thing.
Yeah.
I'm at the point where almost always I'm ready to say to folks, call 211 in Toronto instead of 911. Almost always. Because if it needs to get escalated, 211 and mental health professionals can tell you that.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I'm not saying if somebody's, letting loose with an AK-47 on the street, we're calling mental health professionals in. But in a lot of situations, in a lot of domestics as well, I think we could send mental health professionals in and save the court system, save the police from making catastrophic mistakes that they make, and empowering people like the folks we work with to ask for help when they need it and not be afraid to call when they actually need support.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it will also save up, people will end up in the hospital, but I think in the long run, you'll probably see less hospital visits, less hospital long stays, because if people can get the support that they need, like if we're supplying more resources and funding to these programs, people can get the support they need without going to the hospital. And we see what's happening at the hospital right now with, backed up ERs and all that. Like, yeah.
And do people really get better when they're crammed in a hospital and 3 beds in a room? No, we believe in the community healthcare, right? And the kind of work that we do, we believe in community healthcare providers, which is why the work that we do and the frontline workers that we work alongside, most of their work is not in a residential or in a hospital setting. It's actually like right in the community on the streets, and meeting people right where they are, which is why 211 versus 911 really matters. And I know I beat a drum about this all the time at work, and I beat it in my personal life. And I think the true reason in the end, the reason I beat that drum is because of the privilege that I have, because I don't look in the rear mirror and think I'm afraid of the police. And if I don't say it, I don't know who's going to say it. But here's the thing. A lot of people call the police as a way to enact and empower their own private security. A lot of people call the police to manipulate and control members of their family who have a history of mental health and addiction. A lot of people use the Mental Health Act to encourage the police to go and apprehend family members who may not need to be apprehended and brought to hospital and may need just to be left unwell alone because that's what they're choosing. There's a lot of words that get used to criticize people who call the police too much. I don't want to use those words because I'm not trying to be derogatory or judgmental, but are we at a point now where calling the police can be an abuse of power, an abuse of privilege?
I think so. I think it depends on who's calling, for sure. I think.
Tell me more.
Well, I'm just thinking of an example, and this might be more, stuff that happens in the States. I'm not sure that there's an example of this happening here, but I know there's examples of people calling the police for help. Oh no, there is an example of this happening here. And when the police arrive, the ones that called or the ones that called for help are the ones that end up getting either assaulted by the police or victimized or killed.
Yep.
And it's happened recently. So I think that that can happen. What was the question again?
I was asking that is calling the police, has it become an abuse of power?
Abuse of power.
Can it be an abuse of privilege?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be more specific. I'm going to boil it down. And you know, it's not my job to represent all white men, and it's not your job to represent all white women. But there's a lot of criticism out there that pretty white women get taken seriously by the police and can abuse that relationship by weaponizing the police on those they may not like very much.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely believe that it probably happens. Have I seen an example of that in my own personal life? No. But I know that it does happen, and I think that there are times when people will utilize whatever they have at their fingertips to get what they want, and it doesn't matter who gets hurt. Yeah.
We're also, in the end, right? We're all self-interested, right? Like we
totally.
right? Like that's just as a human being. I need to eat to survive. I need to breathe to survive. We're going to do what we need to do. But those of us who have more privilege than others, when we start thinking we need to do certain things to survive that other people don't need to do to survive, right?
The consequences are different.
They are, right? Like, I talk about my friend who looks in the rearview mirror and is afraid of the police. If there's an altercation between a white person and a black person and the police get called, the black person is 9 times more likely to get shot by the police.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's not the same for everybody. It's really not.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Margot, it is really good to have you here. And it's good to have you here not just because of what I believe to be your brilliance and your advocacy, and I mean it sincerely.
That's very nice.
But like I said in the beginning, it's also good because I have a personal connection to you, working alongside you. You interviewed me for my job, and I talked about Matthew 25, and I talked about how, Jesus recognizes his disciples, the people who love him the most, by those who gave him food when he was hungry, those who gave him water when he was thirsty. And most of all, and I always come back to this one because I think we miss it, when they visited him when he was in prison. There's not a lot of innocent people in prison, Margot. There's a lot of guilty people in prison. And I've been broken and hurt and harmed and guilty in my life. And somebody asked me the other day, who makes you feel your most authentic? Who are the people in your life who you can be yourself with? You're like the real you. And I said, my boss. And somebody said to me, they're like, that's a strange thing. I said, no, it's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing to work for somebody who saw you when you weren't okay, who called you to do the work you're now doing and continues to walk alongside you and empower you in that work. And that's you. And I know you're that for so many different people. So I had to say it because I'm so grateful to you, Margot.
Thank you. That makes all the garbage work I have to do day in and day out worth it. I'm just joking. I love my job. But some days you forget about what it is the goal is day to day. And, sometimes I judge myself on my management style. But then when I hear stuff like that, I think, okay, maybe I am doing something right. Because I do see when I meet people, who are interested in this work and who have that passion, I want to do whatever I can to bring them forward because we need passionate people in this work. We see people all the time that are doing the work, that are just cashing a paycheck and not actually putting in, you know, the empathy and compassion and the real work that you need to be able to, that you need to do in order to get things done. It's not clocking in and clocking out, right?
That word passion in a theological sense is, it means what you're willing to sacrifice everything for. Right? And I see that in you. I see that in the people we work with, right? Like the willingness to sacrifice mind, body, soul, if you believe in it, whatever it might be, but to put it all out on the field, right? For the people who maybe don't have the typical structures and circles of support and family that is needed to be able to not just survive, but to thrive.
And you also have to be okay with not always getting a pat on the back or a thank you. And I think a lot of people have an issue with that, that I see, you know. You have to be okay with just knowing that you did the right thing, and that you're not always going to, get that bonus, or your client isn't always going to be like, thank you so much, you know?
Rarely.
Rarely.
No.
Right?
I don't know, but folks watching are, and I know a little bit about your background. I can tell you about mine. When I'm not at my best mentally, when I've struggled with addiction, when I needed the support of others, I'm not always that friendly. I'm not, and I'm not always that thankful. I'm thankful now, in retrospect, but in those times, I'm not always, right? So it is hard work, and there's not always a bow at the end of it. And sometimes you are advocating for someone who maybe you don't even like the things they say. Maybe you don't even like them.
But they're still a human being that deserves
Yes, dignity.
dignity and compassion.
And beyond that, I don't know anybody who's ever gotten better or less criminal by going to jail, by being forced into some kind of psychiatric treatment. I think the truth is that folks are broken, and so are we. And it's the shared suffering, right? It's the it's knowing that I've been cared by someone else in the same way I'm caring for them now, right? It's what is it? Pay it forward. That movie they used to say.
Yeah.
Pay it forward.
Can I challenge you on something?
Go
that
for
you
it.
just said?
Push me.
Okay. Forcing people into treatment. I know that's tough. That's a tough one.
Yep.
I have seen some pretty miraculous turnarounds in people's lives being forced into treatment. And I just want to say, like, there's a very, like, you have to be able to meet very specific criteria to be able to do that. And it doesn't happen to everyone. It has to be very specific. But when it happens, and it happens for the right reason, it can be really life-changing, and people can be really grateful for that. So I just wanted to say that, because I think it's important to recognize that sometimes people are just so unwell that they do not know what is going on at all.
And I totally agree with you. What I'm speaking to, and I think that you know this, and it's worth naming, I'm speaking to the prevailing conversation out of the federal conservative party, being pushed by Pierre Poilievre,
And Doug
around
Ford.
essentially rounding up our clients if they're homeless, if they don't have a place to be, and forcing them into psychiatric treatment.
Well, Doug Ford his big idea is closing these sites so that they can force them into drug treatment, which we know
Doesn't work.
There's absolutely no science to support that.
Yeah. And so that's really what I'm speaking to.
Right. Okay.
it's the slippery slope that worries me.
It is, yeah.
Right?
And it's
It's
all a slippery slope, all of it.
it's the Mental Health Act, and one of the things that I proposed to you, and I've started working on my own, is like a know your rights camp for the Mental Health Act, right? Like, don't allow just because you have a diagnosis of whatever it is, and so many of the diagnoses have changed too. We don't even say borderline anymore, right? Like,
Yeah.
We really need to empower people to not be taken advantage of, to not be exploited, and to not be manipulated and controlled, which happens all the time now.
Yeah.
And so my advocacy around non-forced treatment is because if I gotta advocate for the most unwell person to not be forced, so that it doesn't domino all the way back, and all of a sudden you've got families who can just round up whoever they want, start forming daughters, sons, mothers, whoever is inconvenient, right? Whoever's not acting the way they would like them to act.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's the same demographic that uses the police, weaponizes the police. It's wealthy white people who weaponize the police, and who will often force family members into treatment. So that's my concern.
And I think that's the common denominator, right? Is people with power, abusing that power and using it to get their own, like, whatever they want out of it without any regard to anyone else. And I think, that's what we're talking about. That's every single thing that we've talked about is an example of that.
It really is about power imbalances. It's about privilege and about dismantling it all is really what it's about.
Well, that's the only way that I think we're going to enact any sort of real change in any of these things. Housing, mental health, addiction, like capitalism is the problem.
Well, that's a whole different thing. Here on the Blue Eyed Devil podcast, we often have a quick round of rapid fire before we come to the closing section of our episode. So I thought I'd shoot you if you ready. Rapid fire. I'll kind of throw you a quick question, a couple of options, and just shoot it back. Sometimes
see what I can do. I'll see what I can do.
All right. Sugar or salt?
Both.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
IPAs or traditional brewery?
IPA.
Toronto or Vancouver?
Ooh. Today, Vancouver. Miss my girls.
Favorite beer?
Right now, it is Outside Jokes by Town Brewery in Oshawa.
Very cool. Favorite politician?
Favorite politician? Bernie Sanders. Who's the most likable politician? I think it's just him.
What advice would you give my 11-year-old son?
Oh, be yourself, buddy. You're such a smart kid. You're going to be just fine. Just listen to your dad.
That's dangerous. What advice would you give to an up-and-coming, strong young woman looking to enter social work?
Volunteer, definitely. Start from working. You got to start from the bottom and work in shelters and do the overnights and put in your time and take it all in and find yourself a good mentor, somebody that wants, that takes an interest in who you are.
Great advice.
Yeah. And you can find that in every workplace. As long as you show initiative and that you're interested in the work, somebody will take notice and take you on.
Eminem or Taylor Swift?
Probably Eminem.
All right.
Although I don't hate Taylor Swift as a person, but
I never loved Taylor Swift at all. Like when she was a young pop star, it wasn't my thing. It wasn't until recently, somebody asked me to really go look at her lyrics, that I realized she's actually a lot like Eminem. She's just dissing people all the time.
Oh.
So I
That's
enjoy
so
it a
funny.
little more now. But who
Yeah.
knew?
Yeah, no, I think, Eminem has some good lyrics and stuff. I think, is he problematic? I
He's
don't know.
deeply problematic. But
Yeah.
I've talked about Eminem on other episodes before, and I'm wearing an Eminem shirt right now
Yes.
and an Eminem hat. And I quote him a lot. Eminem, or Slim Shady,
Yeah.
says a lot of things that go on blatantly and over again in the minds of so many men. Like he is the monologue inside the mind of a lot of men. And by pretending that's not true, by not engaging that line of thinking, by not learning to be critical and self-reflective and evaluatory of the things we think and believe and value, I think we just get worse.
Yeah,
Become
absolutely.
more of all these things that Eminem says. So I think what he does is he gives us an opportunity to take a long, hard look at ourselves and ask, do you really want to be like that? That's what The Death of Slim Shady, the new album, is. It's him fighting with himself to say, do you still really want to be that guy? And I don't think he does. Neither do I.
Godspeed, Eminem.
Well, on that note, we will come to the end of this episode that I think I'm going to brand as the Authentic G episode, the Authentic Ginger episode of the Blue Eyed Devil podcast. Thank you. It has been good to have you with us. Thank you, Margot.
Anytime.
So grateful to have you here. This is the Blue Eyed Devil podcast, streaming on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, the old Google Podcast, which is now YouTube, and straight from Toronto Podcasts, not far from Cherry Beach, in the heart of the Six. Be well.